Hello everyone, welcome back to the Data Scrub. In my invoice sales data video, I showed you how I cleaned and structured invoice sales data in Excel. In this tutorial, I will show you how to answer key business performance questions using pivot tables. So to make it easier to follow along, I've set up Excel file with 7 tabs. The first tab contains the clean invoice data we worked on in our previous video. And each additional tab include a business question that we will answer using pivot table. So it's pivot 1 all the way to pivot 6. This way, as we build each pivot, you can clearly see what question we're trying to answer and how the pivot table helps us get there. So pivot 1, let's get started with a very common question. Which store location generates the most sales? This pivot table is similar to the previous one we've created in our previous video. The one we created in the previous video shows the total sale by store location, if you remember. It's right here. But it's not very easy to tell which location is performing best. So to fix that, I'm going to sort this pivot table from the highest sales to the lowest. So let's get started. I have my data set selected in invoices, and I'm going to go to insert, pivot table from table range. This is already pre-selected to my data set. And then I'll go to existing worksheet since I've already created each of the pivot sheets. And then I will place it here. Just do here and press OK. And now I'm going to drag store location into rows. Now we have all these store locations, and then I will rename this store location. Enter. And then next, I'm going to drag the price into values. And remember, by default, Excel has it as sum of price. So I'll do total revenue. And now I'm going to fix the order of the total revenue. So I will click in the column and then I'll right click, I'll click sort, and then I'll select largest to smallest. So now we can see which store location generates the most sales, which is Hokkaido being on top, Jasper second, Mammoth third, Banff fourth, Zermatt fifth, Dolomite sixth, Matterhorn 7, and then Aspen being the 8th place. Now that we've looked at total sales by store location, the next question we might ask is how customers are actually paying for their purchases. So for this pivot table, I'm going to place the payment method in rows because I want to group the transaction by how customers paid. And I will name this payment method. Then I will add in the invoice ID under value, and you will want the count of the invoice ID for number of transactions. So I will name this total transaction. Next, using the sum of price, so we'll go back to price, add it in the value because we want to compare the total sales, not just the number of transaction. And then I want to name this total sales. Looks like the order of this pivot table is already largest to smallest, but I'm going to sort it anyway to make sure. Actually, it wasn't, so it's good that I sorted it. And next, I want to see the percentage of the overall sales each payment method represent. So I'm going to drag prices under total sales, and then I'm going to right click into this column, show value as percent of grand total. So now this helps us understand not just the dollar amount here, but also how important each payment method is relative to the whole. So I will name this percent of total sales. Percent of total sales. And looking at this pivot table, we can quickly see which payment method customers prefer and which one drives the revenue the most. And this type of analysis could help a business decide whether a payment option is to prioritize or where transaction fee might have a big impact on the customer and also on the business. Counting tell us how often a payment method is used, but summing the price amount tell us how much money it brings in the business. Both are useful, but they just answer different questions. So for the next part of the video, we're going to answer how many transactions were completed versus canceled or refunded, or how many are pending. So in order to do that, I am going to go to the transaction description and I'm going to drop it in column. And I just want the total number of transactions for each transaction status. So I'll drop it in value. And here you have a count of how many transactions were canceled, completed, billed, pending, refunded, and the grand total. Here you can also do the other way around where transaction description is on a row level, but I just wanted to show you a different way that you can also drop it under column to see a different summary formatting. And then I'm going to keep it at the row level and I'll just rename this transaction status. And then this would be total number of transactions. And if you want, you can also add the percentage. So you just drag invoice ID in again, and then right click into the column, go to show value as percent of grand total, and you can rename this to percent of total transactions. So far, we've looked at sales by location and by payment method, which helps us understand where sales are coming from and how customers are paying. Another very common business question is how sales change over time. Are sales increasing or decreasing over time? So looking at sales over time help us understand the trend, patterns, and changes in the performance. And this is exactly what we're going to do for this pivot table. This kind of analysis is commonly used to track growth, seasonality, or identify any unusual spikes or drop in sales. So to do that, I'm going to place data purchase in the row area. So we can see the sales by time period, and then I will use sum of the price, the total sale in value. So all the prices go here, and I'll name this total sales. And as you can see right here, the dates are already grouped by year, quarter, month, and actual date of purchase. Um, you can immediately focus on interpreting the result instead of formatting. You could do a drill down on the row level to quarter, exactly as what it's presented here, and here as well. And overall, if I'm looking at 2024 and 2025, I can tell that sales actually increase over time from 2024 to 2025. And this kind of pivot table is what a business might use to monitor performances over time. So if sales suddenly drop or spike in particular period, this is something worth investigating. And since these dates are already in chronological order, if you drill down by date of purchase right here, you can quickly see which days are performing better and which ones are not. So now that we've looked at where sales happen, how customers pay, and how sales change over time, the next step we're going to do is look at product level performance to see which items are driving the most revenue. For pivot table number 5, let's see which items are our top selling items. So which products drive the most revenue? Let's grab the item name first and drop it in the rows area. And I will be renaming this as items. Or you could also do products. Let's go with products. Next, I'm going to drop the price in value as sum. And we know by default, by dropping price in values, it would just be sum of price. And I will be renaming this total sales. And now we're going to sort this by largest to smallest so we can see which items or products are driving the most revenue. And there we have it. We have unisex snow pants, men's ski boots, unisex insulated long sleeve, women's ski boots, and then so on. For our final pivot table, let's take a look at the customer behavior. So do a small number of customers drive the most sale, or which customer bring the most revenue to the store? I want to see the customers at a row level, so I'm going to drop the customer IDs in rows. Next, I want the count of invoice ID for each of those customers. So drop it in value for the invoice ID. And next, I want to see how much revenue each of those customers bring. So I will grab the price and drop the sum of price in value. And we're going to rename all the headers. Total invoice. And next, this would be total sales. In the final step, we're going to sort this from largest to smallest. And there you have it. Here you can see how many times each customer purchased with the store and how much revenue each of those customers bring. Notice that I'm not changing the original data we cleaned at all for each of these pivot table we did. Every pivot table we created was built on top of the same clean data set. This is where pivot tables become very useful. It summarizes the data for us, and we're not just creating tables, we're answering questions the business might actually care about. I hope you find this video helpful. This is just a very simple pivot table video where you can use the questionnaires to practice how to pivot. I will be making more video in the future, which could be helpful for you if you're a beginner or if you're trying to learn data analytics. So thank you very much for watching.